Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparuta de sangamatasa tawara ye sodavanta bamunjantu satang. So, Esuravanta Bamunjandu Satang means those who listen have confidence that the gates of the deathless are open. So, what do we mean by that as a metaphor? And so, the deathless, the gates to the deathless. So that's the Eightfold Path based on enlightened understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So this is a succinct explanation of the original teaching of the Buddha, which in verbal expressions we can understand the words, because that's how we're conditioned to live in our realities are have to be named, have to be given names, be described and analyzed, criticized, loved or hated, liked or disliked. So this divisiveness of the thinking process, just reflect on how thinking is a very divisive faculty that we experience, and we're very attached to thoughts, words, meanings, expressions. We like to analyze. We go to psychotherapists or psychoanalysts or have meetings to discuss our emotions and feelings, because these are conditions that we identify with, that this sense of my feelings, my emotions, my view, my opinion. It's all thinking, it's all based on words, and this sense of I am a physical body, this is me, this is what I really am, and what I think is my reality, and then we have ideas of respect and appreciation and acceptance. And then there are boundaries. How far can you accept or appreciate anybody when they don't behave the way that you consider proper, don't agree with your views? Then these ideals of respecting each other and loving each other, everybody has equal rights and so forth, is held as an ideal, but the reality is we have very critical minds, and the world we create is with a critical thinking mind. So in any situation, whether it's monasticism or married life or professional life, family life, there's always something to criticize and complain about. Because samsara it's not perfect. Nobody on a personal level in form or thought or personality is perfect. There's no perfect personalities or physical forms. There's no perfect man or perfect woman. The ideal of a perfect man and woman is an ideal, another word. we create. Perfect monasteries, perfect governments, perfect democracy. And this is, and we think of perfect understanding, samadhi, is the thinking mind has been perfected. Is that samadhi? Is that the perfect? Is that right understanding, or perfect understanding is figuring it all out with words, with concepts, with Pali words, with Sanskrit, English, or whatever language. Is that samadhi? That's in the Eightfold Path, right understanding. And so in life, in social situations, in societies and so forth, we endlessly complain because there's so much to complain about, because of the imperfections we perceive in ourselves or in each other, in the situation we live in the community, in the society, in the political system. No matter how perfect you can imagine a society to be, it can only be imperfect, because societies are an illusion that we create. A sangha is a society, a group. And so the Sangha is a group of individual people, each coming from their world, their separate world that they create with words and thoughts and ideas. And then there's so much to complain about. In Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, we attach to ideas of perfect vinaya, perfect Dhamma. That we develop our sense of what's perfect, absolutely right and true through reading the scriptures, the Vinaya. We form opinions, and then we have our own view of what is perfect, what is right, what the Buddha really taught, what the Buddha's words are, what they really mean. As we translate Pali into English, and then there's arguments about the meaning of the different Pali words. And we criticize those who don't agree with it. We quote Ajahn Chah as our standard, or Bhikkhu Bodhi, or Somdet Buddha Gosajan as our standard authorities on these subjects, because they've done the best in terms of figuring out the right words. But they're only words, and words are sankharas. So we're back to this sankhara. This word is a Pali word, and it can be translated in so many different ways. Phenomena, conditions, and so forth are good enough English equivalents to sankhara. Now, if we were a word, if our dependency is having a name and a position, status is important on the ego level, having status in the society, in the sangha. But are you really a name? Is that, you were given the name after you were born. None of us were born with a name. Our parents decided on the name after we were born. So it's a given thing. It's a condition. And then, and names change as we grow up, and we may not like the name we were given by our parents, and then we adopt another name. We have, a Buddhist name, and we identify with that. But this identification is a form of clinging, that when we don't investigate sankharas, when we don't witness phenomena or conditions as they arise, when we get caught into attaching to views and opinions, then we're lost in the samsara, or the conditioned realm of birth and death. So that's not the deathless. The word deathless is another word, trying to define what the deathless is. We say Dhamma. We use theories, metaphysical terms, ideals of the deathless. We create more words, more elaborate descriptions, or that convey something way up high, up above, or like metaphysics, or that seems something very high up, not just ordinary daily life, dealing with hunger and physical fatigue and aging process. So there is a lot to complain about in samsara, not to dismiss it, and we should just love every sankhara that arises, or not complain about it. But complaining is a habit that we develop from early life. So it's, how do we deal with a complaining mind? Because, there's always something, as much as we try to perfect the buildings, the building committee for Amaravati trying to perfect the plan for rebuilding the monastery, and the kitchen, the sala, the accommodations for the nuns, the accommodations for the monks, and we can create, different views about what's really absolutely right or necessary, with the words we have. And then we try to manifest that through materials. But no matter how well it's thought out and planned, there's still, you'll find, no matter how wonderful a building plan be and how it manifests in a beautiful way, there's still, you find plenty to complain about. Complain about each other. Junior monks complaining about senior monks, or junior nuns complaining about senior nuns, or senior nuns complaining about junior nuns, senior monks complaining about junior monks. Then you have an ideal of what a good junior monk should be, how to behave, not complain, watch the mind, be aware. Is good advice. But how do you deal with the complaining mind? Because it's a very strong habit. Because we've complained all our life about our parents, about school, about teachers, about playmates, about bullies. So there is, samsara is like that. It's all changing phenomena, and so in terms of if we're going to live in samsara, and just get caught up in complaining about it, trying to make it perfect, it's futile. It's impossible because sankharas, phenomena, can't be perfect. It's impossible. Perfection on these changing conditions that we hold to, cling to, create our worldview, a sense of ourself, is all changing phenomena. So that's why the world is the way it is. You think by now with all this talk, democracy, America is a progressive form, the perfect example of democracy, but it's a shambles now. And you hear the news about the present governmental system, and the Republicans and the Democrats can't agree on anything. They think they're all being terribly democratic. But what is democracy? In the reality of here and now, it's an ideal. Bipartisanship, politically, the two parties should work together for the welfare of the American population is the ideal, and that's how it should be. So in the American political system, there's always so much to complain about. So in one's own life as a samana, how do you stop? Can I just say you shouldn't complain about anything? That's kind of advice. Watch your mind and stop complaining. Shut up and conform to the Vinaya and the standard of the established for the monastery, and watch the mind is an ideal. But we have to deal with the realities of the way we are, the way these sankharas, these conditions operate, that we have to live with. Because whether you're alone in your kuti, or in the group, at a meeting, or at a meal time, or whatever, it changes from, somebody makes too much noise when they're eating. We feel really annoyed. I remember being very attached to samatha meditation practices and feeling really irritated if somebody crinkled their nylon jacket or sneezed too loud, because it would disrupt my samadhi practice. So this is, when you're perfect meditation hall where everybody's sitting perfectly still in perfect lotus posture, practicing perfectly is an ideal. But the realities of monastic life is like this. As much as we want to be like the Buddha, our role model, or like Luang Por Cha, Luang Por Man, these great monks, we can't be, because the conditions, the sankharas, are all different and changing in all of us, all the time. So complaining is a habit, because it's thinking about from the ideal of, or what you, particularly ideals that one is very attached to, and judging the present realities of any situation by this very high standard of samadhi, right understanding. So we can figure it out intellectually, samadhi. But then go to the deathless, try to figure that out with words. door is a metaphor, so, is there really a door we have to find? A gate that we have to find? Or, metaphors are signs, encouraging signs towards looking, opening the door and looking, observing, entering the deathless. But what is the deathless right now, sitting here this afternoon in the temple? What is the deathless reality? Yesodawan Taba Munjan Tu Satang is trust in awareness. Because that, in terms of, is something that isn't personal, isn't a sankhara. What you're aware of, the conditions changing, the physical bodies that we experience, the emotions we feel, the opinions and views that we might hold to and believe in, are all sankharas, are all conditions. So there's no way we can find a perfect condition to have perfect understanding. Right understanding, we want an absolute right. Righteousness is another strong view. In religious life, you get very righteous. What did Luang Por Chah really teach? What is his, you hear monks saying, I was with Luang Por Chah, I was a upatak for Luang Por Chah for 10 years, and I know what he taught, and other people hear different versions. What did the Buddha really teach? The Buddha Vaja, that we, is absolute right thinking, right understanding as we read the scriptures, the suttas. So this is where the Bhatipata, Bhavana, is not about reason, logic, analysis, thinking, but this witnessing, observing. Because we agree with the Buddha that everything is impermanent, all conditions are impermanent. Just try to find a condition that's permanent, and everything is changing, and that's, something that average people never really contemplate very profoundly. I never did till I started meditating. If you said everything's changing, I guess so, but you never really notice change. So just taking the Buddha's words and projecting them onto everything, every sankhara you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, isn't it? It's not projecting these words of the Buddha onto the reality of a situation, but taking the words like gate to the deathless, door to the deathless, and not trying to find a gate or a door, or try to figure out what the deathless is with words. And so this Yesodawan Taba Munjan Tu Satang, those who listen, who hear, who are paying attention, is a Sodawanta. So I heard today a monk I know is going to take a PhD in Vipassana meditation. And we laughed at that, getting a PhD in Vipassana sounds, because a PhD is just more words, isn't it? And Vipassana is insight, it means insight into, looking into reality. Here and now. It's not about attending a course and a PhD course in Buddhist Vipassana meditation. Well, getting a PhD in Vipassana meditation is all right, you know. Nothing wrong with it, and it might be very interesting, but you're still caught in the realm of thinking and trying to figure out exactly the Pali words and put them into Thai or English equivalents. So it's not about getting a PhD in anything. But in Patipata, in Bhavana, Yesodavanta Bamunchan Tu Satang. This is like, Satang is translated as faith or confidence. It's not like belief. When we talk about the word saddha, in the word Pali word saddha, it's not about believing in Buddhist teachings. It's confidence. In awareness, here and now. So the complaining mind is something to look at, rather than try to stop complaining. Right? Just, because it's, I tell you you shouldn't complain, and you want to obey me, and so you try to, you feel guilty about when you do complain, because it would, Ajahn Sumedho wouldn't like that. And so it gets into even more complicated neurotic patterns of guilt and kind of self-aversion or fear, because the mind does complain, and you shouldn't. You should be content with the four requisites. And so, complaining is a result of attachment to the thinking process, to ideas, ideals, words, views and opinions. So that's the explanation, but then the bhavana, the vipassana, is looking at it, complaining, listening to it. Early on in monastic life, in the first few years with Luang Por I would, stop complaining. I deliberately complained, listening not to anybody. I wasn't complaining to other monks, but I was listening to my complaining mind. So I decided to really complain, intentionally complain and listen to myself, to this mind complaining about life. And so then the investigation is not to attach to the complaining, but to listen to it. Is this the gate to the deathless? Is this peace and happiness? When I complain endlessly, and mind just sits there and wants things to be different, or complains about other monks, or about the weather, about anything. And I had insight into the suffering of attachment to these complaining habits. Like at Wat Pah Pong, there were so many mosquitoes. And in those days, there were no mosquito nets. There were mosquito nets we had personally, but like on screens. The Makutis didn't have any screens on the windows. And so there's a plethora of mosquitoes sitting in meditation hall complaining about the mosquitoes. So I just listened to this mind, deliberately complain, because mosquitoes are something to complain about. We don't like them. They bring disease. World Health Organizations try to eradicate them. They're enemies, nasty little critters that suck your blood. And so there's all kinds of good reasons to kill them, complain about them. So on that level of thinking and reason and logic, but then the Vinaya for bhikkhus, for Siladharas, is you're not to intentionally kill anything. So then, you're stuck in a situation with a lot of mosquitoes that you can't kill. What do you do? And then there's the fear of getting malaria, dengue fever, all these terrible diseases that mosquitoes are blamed for. And you can make your life perfectly wretched over mosquitoes. And so this is that what we have to do, is just live with mosquitoes and just shut up, try to stop complaining about them, or is there something to learn from mosquitoes? So this is a question to ask yourself. The things that we complain about, maybe there's something to just listen to the complaining mind. And that which listens, that which is aware, isn't complaining. Awareness doesn't complain about mosquitoes or anything else. Mindfulness is not about complaining about life or situations or opinions or views, but they are what they are. Sankharas arising and ceasing. What arises must cease, what begins must end. So rather than just kind of shut up, stiff upper lip, grin and bear it, these mosquitoes, why did God create mosquitoes? Because all of us, if we were God, none of us would have created mosquitoes. So then you can start blaming God for mosquitoes. But there's a lot of things we don't like in the samsara, a lot that we disagree with or don't want. So, as Sotavantas, who are paying attention, listening, trust in awareness. And to trust in awareness are still words. So how do you do that? Is by recognizing that awareness is conscious awareness of the way it is in the present moment. It's timeless. Timelessness, here and now. Santitiko akaliko, ehipasiko, opanayiko, bhajatang. Here and now. So I remember thinking about mosquitoes in Wat Pa Pong, and one day I had the real insight. I said, well, they've been in Thailand longer than I have. This is where they breed and live. And I come from America, and I start complaining about mosquitoes, as if they shouldn't be here. And we do that when we travel, when we don't agree with things, the customs of foreign countries, different cultures. We go visit other societies, other religions, and we have views about what's right and what Buddhism is absolutely right, and anything that differs from it is wrong, because the opposite of right is wrong. So right and wrong as absolutes are impossible. There's no absolute rightness or wrongness. There are no absolute sankharas, conditions. Absolute is just another word. Like immortality, we think of, something being born and living forever. The immortal gods of the Greek pantheon and so forth, are immortal. They're myths. They're creations of the human mind. They're immortal, so that's an ideal that we give to various views about Greek religion, Greek gods. But that's still words. It's not based on reality, but on belief. So there's this belief, we believe in Buddhism is one thing. But is that saddha? Can we translate saddha, the Pali word saddha, as belief? Is it believing in Buddhism, believing in the Four Noble Truths, believing in what teachers say? That's where, but I tell you what to believe and you might accept that. And that's belief, but it's still not saddha. So saddha and panya and the faculties are very important. They balance each other out. For example, when we meditate, when we come to Buddhism, there is a level of saddha, interest. Maybe we know nothing about Buddhism before, we're brought up in a different society, different religion. So we don't have any strong views, but we find what we've heard of Buddha's teaching as interesting. That's the beginning, interest. There's a kind of interest. It's not a belief. You don't believe in Buddhism yet, but you're interested enough to read books about it, read the suttas and so forth. And then through reading the suttas, you begin to have even more interest and faith, which leads to panya, wisdom. You have insight into Dhamma, into reality itself. Profound insight into reality is not intellectual. So the complaining mind is a teacher for us. And we complain about each other. I used to, the mistakes I've made in Sangha life is kind of assuming that someone that isn't like myself is somehow deluded. So, there's this kind of conceit and arrogance of the ego that thinks that because I can't think of myself as a rational, sensible person, that everybody, just explain everything properly. Explain the Dhamma in detail, in all the meanings of the different words, the different concepts in the suttas and the scriptures, and logically, and everybody who's reasonable will agree with me. And so there's endless conflicts about interpreting the scriptures with very reasonable intellectual people. And then the conceit, the sakya ditthi, the mana ditthi, the sense of, my understanding is better than yours. Or I've got the right understanding, yours is mithya ditthi, you don't understand it properly, is a complaining, critical mind. So this is teaching us, these are sankharas, the sakya ditthi, the arrogance, the conceit that we might be identified with. We begin to observe it. Mindfulness is not conceited. It's not arrogant. It's aware of conceit is like this. Thinking my view is right or better than your view, or your view is wrong. Right and wrong are sankharas. Where awareness of sankharas is not a sankhara. This is where we trust in this awareness, because that is the door, the gate to the deathless, which you can't find, the deathless, through analysis, through words, through beliefs. But satta and panya, these two words, instead of conflicting, when we think of you a satta jarit or a panya jarit, we can divide those who are satta people, they believe everything blindly. And if you're panya jarit, you tend to look down on, they just superstitious, caught in their habit patterns. But we're the real insight practitioners. We have panya. That can be conceit, isn't it? It sounds like conceit. So no matter what the conceit is like, no matter how right we might be, or wrong we might be, the door to the deathless is awareness of right and wrong as a view and opinion. They're not absolutes. There's no absolute right. So is samaditthi an absolute right? It is words, right understanding. It can't be just the words, or just figuring Buddhism out because you're so intelligent and have read the Tripitaka, studied it for years and have a PhD. Right understanding, samaditthi, is then from insight. And insight comes from saddha, confidence in awareness, trust in awareness. These words, it's like this. So these little pins I give out now, saying the way it is a reminder of that. No matter what you're thinking, no matter how arrogant or conceited you might judge any viewpoints you might discover in your mind, it is the way it is. It can't stay. The most conceited opinion is impermanent and it ceases. the most arrogant stance that you might hold to, cling to, if you really look at it, witness it, is it doesn't last. Egos are very changeable conditions where, trying to become someone without an ego is still a futile attempt coming from ignorance. Trying to get rid of the ego or feel you shouldn't have an ego is another concept that you might be clinging to in meditation. Like anatta, there's no ego, there's no, an arhat doesn't have any mana, beyond avijja, completely free. We understand the words. But mana and sakyaditi, are to be observed, with awareness, trusting in awareness. Being conceited is like this. Complaining about life is like this. And as you trust in awareness, you begin to see that conceit and arrogance cease. If you try to not be arrogant or criticize yourself for conceited views, then you never notice the cessation of it. You just create more conditions and beliefs that you are the arrogant conditions that might arise in your conscious experience in the present. So samsara is teaching us. We're not trying to, get rid of samsara and live in what we call nibbana, free from suffering. That's the ideal. But in these mortal coils that we identify with, these conditioned forms, habit patterns, sakyaditi silabhata paramasa, vicikicca, instead of trying to get rid of them, of these first three fetters, so we can become stream enters, this is all, if we might have belief in that if we do this, we'll become stream enters. But that's not stream entry. You don't become a stream enterer through trying to get rid of the three fetters, but understand the three fetters. So this understanding is panya, which is aligned with sattva, or trust in awareness. So that's why, I encourage you learn from the way you are. How you see yourself as a person, as a personality, as a social entity, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, male or female, monk or nun or whatever, these are artificial conditions. They're conditioned phenomena. But what isn't conditioned is awareness, consciousness, here and now. So liberation is always about here and now, not about the future, about getting right understanding, that you imagine samadhi is. As a personality, can any of you say you have perfect understanding of the Dhamma, as a person, no matter how well read you are? Does understanding come through interpreting Pali and finding perfect English equivalents for Pali terms? Is that right understanding? So in terms of wisdom isn't about words, about concepts, about getting rid of kilesas and becoming a stream enterer, a once-returner, a non-returner, and an arahant. Personalities cannot become enlightened. So as a person, there's no way, as long as you identify with personality, it's a futile attempt to try to become an enlightened person, because personality is an artificial condition. It's a sankhara. Sankharas don't get enlightened because their very nature is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. So what are you then if you're not a person? So this is a question to ask, and there's no answer for it. Why do you want to find out what you are? Do you want me to tell you who you are, or how you should be, or what your real self is? You say real self is awareness, but then you don't believe that either, that just the words that, I really am awareness, and that's what I am, I'm not really Sumedho Bhikkhu. It sounds conceited again. And then it sounds overestimation. But what is truly deathless at this very moment, the reality of here and now, is conscious awareness. And trust this. So you're willing to look at the dark side of yourself, the angry, jealous, frightened conditions that might arise in consciousness. You're willing to learn from mosquitoes, from the way you react to others in the Sangha, and so forth. You're learning from the sankharas that they're not self. Then what are you if you're not a sankhara? And then, so this is the unknowing, unanswered question. But there's still awareness, with no name, no projection, just pure, absolute, pure conscious awareness that is impersonal, not self. So when this begins to sink in, when you begin to have this insight, you realize there's absolutely nothing to fear, really nothing to do. It's such a relief to know this reality, ultimate reality, to be this reality itself, rather than the personality, the physical body, the emotional habits that we cling to, the five khandhas, the sense world that we enjoy or hate. This rather than seeing how, elderly people, I really have an interest in elderly people now because I'm one of them. You kind of done it all. And then death is not, the perception of death is not, not far away when you're 86, 87 years old, death of the body. But if you haven't realized the true nature, Dhamma itself, the pure, unsoiled, unstained perfection of reality itself, of Dhamma, then you die with the idea that you're the body. And then that can be very frightening. You might have beliefs about death. You get reincarnated or reborn, or you just disappear into a void of nothingness. Where is Dr. Rohini now? Funeral. Dr. Rohini was a big supporter for years here at Amaravati. Died. Where is Ajahn Chah right now? Where is Luang Por Man right now? Where are they? And we don't know. We have the word, the memory, Luang Por Chah, Dr. Rohini, memories now. We have memories. Mudita, I went to her funeral in Bangkok. Now, she's a strong supporter and absolutely trusted Luang Por Chah's teaching. We don't know. We don't, but we're aware of not knowing is like this. So we asked various monks in Thailand, where is Rohini now? And she's in the Deva realm or something. And that's a comforting view, not that it's wrong. But Rohini was a real complaining person. We wondered, did she die complaining about life? Or was that just the surface? The habit patterns of an individual. What we know is we don't know where Luang Por Chah is right now. Was Luang Por Chah an arahant? And then people have asked that question. And can Luang Por Chah as a person become an arahant before he dies, or he was paralyzed at the last 10 years of his life? All we can do is we don't know, or we create doubts about it. Doubts are like this. Not knowing is like this. Believing he's completely resting in nibbana is another concept, another view. So these are views. There's nothing wrong with them. But even these comforting views and these beliefs in reincarnation or rebirth. Some monks practice in order to become reborn in the time of Maitreya Buddha. In the future, Maitreya Buddha is supposed to come in the future Buddha. So that's an ideal, isn't it? Practicing hard, being a good monk in this lifetime to be reborn when Maitreya Buddha comes to the planet Earth. It's still words, concepts, ideas. And that's all we need to know. It's not to criticize the belief in Maitreya Buddha or to want to be reborn in the time of the Maitreya, be reborn in a Deva heaven or a Brahma realm. But what are they here and now? What is the Brahma realm here and now for all of us? Is an idea, a concept, a belief. It's a sankhara. This you can know. This is direct knowing with wisdom. All sankharas are impermanent. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. And this is a direct teaching of the Buddha, perfect understanding, samadhi, comes from, his wisdom understanding, not belief in the teachings of the Buddha, but practice, to actually do what he was pointing at. So, when we say santidiko, akaliko, ehipasiko, upanayiko, bhajatang vetida parunyuhi, and, in morning, evening chanting, these are, the Dhamma becomes something, not just an ideal word or an abstract concept of perfection, but the reality of here and now, santidiko, apparent here and now, consciousness, as I've told you many times, is here and now. Your conscious right now is like this. You can't find it using the metaphor of trying to see your own eyes. Do you need to see your own eyes? The fact that you can see is the thing. The fact that awareness is here and now is enough. You don't have to find who is aware as some object, something, as a person. So see your life here in Amaravati, no matter what mental states arise and cease, faith or doubt or criticism or obsessive trust in everything here, or your discontentment with life here, or wanting to be somewhere else, or doubting yourself or feeling guilty, be frightened, envious. They're all teaching us about the nature of sankhara. So it's not projecting impermanence on sankharas, it's observing sankharas. Puto, in the Buddha, Puto or Puru is the witnessing reality of consciousness. It knows the way it is like this. Because on the ultimate level it's true, all conditions are impermanent. Is awareness a condition then? That's the question. Is consciousness a condition? Because it's mentioned in the 5 khandhas. But that's sensory. Senses are conditioned, aren't they? For consciousness to manifest forms, it has to have senses, space and ears, eyes, nose, tongue, body, separate forms that can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, feel within space. But that which is aware of sankhara, can one sankhara be aware of another sankhara? Is there an ultimate sankhara that's aware of impermanence? Is this awareness of impermanence, the sankhara that's aware of all the other sankharas? Or is awareness, conscious awareness here and now, the the gate, the very opening to the deathless reality of Dhamma. So I offer this as a reflection.